The audience expected just another easy late-night interview, a few jokes about Los Angeles, some playful jabs at the royal family, a charming story or two, and then good night. Instead, they witnessed something else unfold. A prince arrived, smiling. A host tried to keep things light, and a live show gradually transformed into a quiet standoff between ego and patience till Jimmy Kimmel did something he had never done before. The El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard buzzed like a beehive. The band finished a punchy riff. The lights bathed the stage in deep blues and warm ambers, and the audience was primed to laugh at anything remotely funny. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer boomed over the speakers. Please welcome your host, Jimmy Kimmel. The crowd erupted. Jimmy walked out in his usual dark, fitted suit with a neat tie, waving as he crossed the stage. He delivered his monologue, tossing jokes about traffic, politics, and a Hollywood scandal, then glanced at the camera with his familiar half-smirk. Tonight, he said, voice dropping into mock seriousness, we have a very special guest. You may know him from the British royal family, a Netflix documentary, multiple interviews about the British royal family, a book about the British royal family, and, of course, his ongoing side career as California's most publicly relocated citizen. The audience laughed. Jimmy turned to the side of the stage. Please welcome Prince Harry. The band kicked in. Applause swelled. Prince Harry stepped out from the wings, wearing a sharp black suit, perfectly tailored, but without a tie. His white shirt was buttoned just enough to say, I'm relaxed, but not too relaxed. He had a casual beard, slightly disheveled hair, and the walk of someone fully aware of every camera in the room. He gave a small, almost reluctant wave, then moved straight to Jimmy's desk with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jimmy rose to greet him, extending a hand. Good to see you, he said warmly. Harry shook it briefly. Yeah, he replied. Sure. The audience wasn't sure how to react, so they continued clapping. Harry sat, leaning back, one ankle resting casually on the opposite knee. Jimmy settled into his chair, shuffling his notes with ease. So, Jimmy said, how's Los Angeles treating you? Harry shrugged. It's fine, he said. Weather's better than London. People are slightly less nosy. Not by much, though. He glanced pointedly at Jimmy's desk. A flicker of laughter ran through the crowd. Well, you were on a talk show, Jimmy replied. If you wanted privacy, there's a very quiet IHOP down the road. Laughter died. Harry gave a tight, crooked grin. Yeah, well, he said, I'm used to people pretending they want to talk, but actually just wanting a headline. Jimmy opened his mouth, then closed it again, letting the comment hang, smiling politely, and moved on. You've been in America for a while now. We've got Netflix, book deals, a whole lot of Oprah. How's California life compared to, say, Windsor? Harry exhaled slowly. Less cold, he said. Less emotionally cold, or just weather. Jimmy quipped. Harry turned toward him, eyes narrowing slightly. Both, obviously. A few in the audience laughed too loudly, unsure if they should. Jimmy rolled with it. You like being here? Proper American now. Yell at other drivers in traffic. Complain about oat milk being out at Starbucks. Harry smirked. The first sign of real amusement. I've seen worse crowds outside palaces than outside Starbucks, he added. At least these people don't pretend to like you. That line landed sharper than expected. The laughter was thinner this time. Jimmy kept his tone light. You don't think Starbucks baristas like you? I don't really care if they do, Harry replied, shrugging. That's kind of the point. The point of coffee. Jimmy blinked. The point of being here, Harry said. I'm not in the business of convincing people to like me anymore. That's what Britain was for. There it was, the first little crack in the politely glossy night. Jimmy nodded slowly, hiding his reaction behind a half smile. Well, to be fair, You did bring some of that business model with you, he said. Netflix, a best-selling book, interviews. People seem very interested in your dislike of people being interested in you. The crowd laughed harder. Classic Kimmel. Harry's jaw tightened. Or maybe, he said, people are interested because nobody else was honest enough to say it. The energy in the room shifted subtly. Jimmy let the moment breathe, then flipped a card. All right, he said. Let me ask something a little lighter. How are the kids? We see pictures, hear stories. Are they adapting to life here? Do they like palm trees and sunshine? Harry glanced at the audience, then back at Jimmy. They're kids, he said flatly. They're not doing press. A short, sharp laugh rose from a corner of the crowd. Okay. More from surprise than amusement. I wasn't asking for a press conference, Jimmy said gently. Just if they're happy. Harry's gaze cooled. Yeah, he said. They're fine. Happy. Whatever word makes it least marketable for you. Jimmy paused. The smile stayed on his lips, but dropped from his eyes. I'm not trying to market your children, he said slowly. I'm just asking about your family. Harry shrugged again, the motion almost lazy. Everyone always says that before they sell the story, he replied. For a few seconds, the audience didn't laugh. A cough echoed from the back row. The band shifted slightly. Jimmy tapped his card lightly against the desk. Okay, he said. So, you're very protective. I get that. Let's talk about something you've chosen to put out there. He held up the next card. Your book. Groans and applause mixed from the crowd. Double quotes. Ah, yes, Jimmy said. That little paperback therapy session you did. The audience roared with laughter. Harry didn't. He stared at Jimmy, lips pressed into a thin line. You read it? Harry asked. Jimmy hesitated. I read parts of it, he admitted. It's long. I have a show and kids and, a life. More laughter. Harry didn't smile. Right, he said. So, you didn't read it, but you talk about it. Right. Jimmy lifted a brow. We're in Hollywood, he replied. That's kind of the job description. A few people cheered. Harry gave a slow, sarcastic clap, just quiet enough to be disrespectful. Impressive, he said. Commentary without context. You do great in the British press. The tone of the room dipped again. Jimmy took a breath, keeping his voice light, even as his patience was tested. Okay, he said. Let's go there then. The British press you've talked a lot about them. You've had a complicated relationship. Is there any part of you that misses the old life? The structure, the security, the castles? Harry chuckled once, but there was no humor in it. I miss the parts that weren't rotten, he said. Unfortunately, those were outnumbered. And your family? Jimmy asked gently. Do you miss them? Harry's eyes hardened instantly. You sound like every interviewer who wants a redemption arc, he said. It's not going to happen just because it makes good ratings. The audience murmured. Laughter had mostly vanished, replaced with a tense quiet. Jimmy held up a hand. I'm not looking for a redemption arc, he said. I'm just asking. Do you miss your brother, your father? Harry gave a cold half smile. I miss people who acted like family, he said. I don't miss institutions with better PR than conscience. A low ooh echoed from the crowd. Jimmy looked at him carefully. Do you think there's a path back? He asked. Not to the institution, just to the people. Harry's eyes flashed with irritation. Everyone loves that question, he said. It keeps the fantasy alive that I'll go back. Say sorry, pose for a Christmas photo, and you all get your little fairy tale ending. It's boring. The word hung in the air like an insult aimed at the entire room. Jimmy shifted in his chair. All right, he said slowly. So, no fairy tale. What do you want people to take away from everything you've said? The interviews, the book, tonight, this conversation? Harry's answer came quickly. That I'm done performing for them, he said. The irony rippled silently through the audience. Some exchanged looks. A woman in the front row folded her arms. Jimmy's comedian persona vanished for a moment, replaced by the professional host who knew when a line had been crossed. "You do realize you're on national television right now," Jimmy said quietly. "This is still a performance." Harry looked back with cool defiance. "No," he said. "This is me tolerating questions long enough to remind people I don't owe them anything." The band members glanced at each other. A stagehand froze just off camera. Somewhere in the control room, a producer muttered, "Oh, come on." Jimmy let out a slow breath and smiled again for the audience, pulling the mood back with muscle memory. "Well," he said, attempting lightness, "we're off to a bright and cheerful start, aren't we?" The audience laughed, but this time the laughter felt like a warning. For the first time that night, everyone could feel it. Prince Harry wasn't just being edgy or honest. He was agitated, and Jimmy's patience, though intact, had begun to fray. The applause sign flashed mechanically, and the audience obeyed, clapping louder than they felt. Jimmy smiled through it, but his eyes stayed on Harry as the band wrapped up a quick transition riff. "So," Jimmy said, adjusting the note cards, "let's talk about someone people are even more obsessed with than you." He paused for effect. "Megan." The audience reacted. Some cheers, some murmurs, a few scattered boos smothered under the noise. Harry's jaw ticked almost imperceptibly. "Oh, good," Harry said dryly. "We've reached the part where you pretend you didn't book me just to say her name into a microphone." A flicker of tension rolled through the room. Jimmy pushed a smile. "I mean, I'd like to think you're interesting on your own," he said. "But I also like ratings, so let's split the difference." The crowd laughed. Harry didn't. "She's my wife," Harry said, clipped. "Not a segment." Jimmy nodded. "Absolutely. And that's why I'm asking about your actual life, not your PR reel. How is she? How's life together here in Los Angeles? Half royalty, half Netflix brand." Harry leaned back further in his chair, the black suit stretching with the movement. He looked at Jimmy with a smile that wasn't friendly. "She's fine," he said. "We're fine. America loves us. Isn't that the headline you want?" Jimmy exhaled through his nose. "I was hoping for a little more than fine," he said. "Maybe a story, a moment, something human." Harry tilted his head. "Funny," he replied. "I did the emotional exposure thing, wrote a book, did the interviews, cried about trauma. Everyone called me weak or manipulative. And now you want another moment." He gestured toward the audience. "Sorry, I'm fresh out of emotional content for people who rate it out of 10. The line drew a mix of laughs and winces. Jimmy watched him for a beat. "Okay," Jimmy said. "So, the emotional pantry is closed." "It's very," Harry said. Still, Jimmy continued in that practiced late-night tone that made confrontation sound like banter. "You do live a life that people are curious about. You've got little kids growing up in America, gay marriage constantly in the spotlight, this weird cross-continental identity." "That's not nothing," Harry shrugged. "People are curious because they're bored," he said. "I don't have to feed that, but you do," Jimmy pointed out calmly. "That's what every deal you've signed is, feeding curiosity." The audience hummed in recognition. Harry's eyes hardened for a moment. "You say that like I don't get anything out of it," he said. "I do. I get control." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because this doesn't look very controlled." A ripple of laughter crossed the crowd. Harry's expression went flat. "Cute," he said. "Late night jab. Good for the monologue." Jimmy let out a small sigh, still smiling, and shifted topics. "You mentioned people expecting a fairy tale," he said. "Let me ask something, maybe not about castles or crowns, just marriage. Is it easier here? Easier being a husband in America than being a prince in the UK?" Harry's gaze flickered briefly, caught off guard by the simplicity of it. Then the wall came back up. "It's easier being a human when people stop demanding I play a role for their nostalgia. The key replied. So yes, easier. Jimmy nodded. And as a father, Harry's shoulders tensed. I'm a good father, he said sharply. Jimmy held up both hands. I didn't say you weren't. I asked what it's like. It's private, Harry snapped. That's what it's like. The audience quieted again. Jimmy's smile thinned. You know, he said, for someone who's done multiple public sit-downs, a global documentary, and a memoir, you're suddenly very allergic to questions. I'm allergic to interrogation disguised as interest, Harry retorted. Jimmy looked at him steadily. Do you think anyone can ask you anything without you seeing it as an attack now? Harry didn't answer immediately. His jaw clenched, muscles shifting under the stage lights. Depends who's asking, he said finally. Jimmy nodded slowly. Okay, let's say I'm asking as someone who's also a father, also in the public eye, not just as a host. Do you ever worry that someday your kids will feel like they grew up inside a project rather than a family? The question hung in the air. The band stayed still. The audience stayed silent. My kids, he said, voice low, will have the privilege of knowing I did everything I could to protect them from a toxic machine. If you want to twist that into a project, that's your narrative, not mine. Jimmy absorbed that. Fair enough. But they'll also grow up seeing their parents' lives on screens. Your pain, your anger, your family fights. That's part of the deal, too. You put it out there. Harry leaned forward now, relaxed posture gone. I put out what was necessary, he said. You don't get to decide what that cost was. Jimmy nodded again, eyes sharper. Let's talk about cost, he said quietly. Not just yours, your family's. He flipped to another card, but didn't look down. Your mother, Jimmy said. The audience made a small, collective intake of breath. You've talked about her a lot, how the press treated her, how the institution treated her. Do you ever worry you've become addicted to fighting ghosts no one else is chasing? Harry's expression shifted for the first time into something like genuine offense. That's disgusting, he said. Jimmy didn't flinch. It's a question, he replied. You've said again and again how much Diana's story shaped you, how much you hate seeing history repeat. But sometimes, doesn't holding on become its own trap? Harry's voice dropped. My mother died because people wouldn't leave her alone. If you think for a second, I'm going to let go so the same people can rewrite her memory. Jimmy cut in gently. I'm not asking you to forget her. I'm asking if you know how to live without constantly weaponizing what happened to her. The word landed like a slap. Harry stared at him, breathing harder now. You have no right to talk about my mother like that, he said. You never knew her. You only know the headlines. Jimmy's voice softened. You're right. I didn't know her. I only know what she meant to a lot of people watching this right now. People who loved her because she seemed human in a world that wasn't. Harry's nostrils flared. And now, you want to turn her into a segment too? He said bitterly. Of course you do. Jimmy shook his head. No, he said. I want to understand the man sitting in front of me who's still bleeding every time her name comes up. For a split second, Harry's eyes showed something raw and unguarded. Then it snapped shut again, replaced by something colder, harsher. What you want, Harry said, is a moment, a clip, a viral tear. I'm not giving it to you, okay? Jimmy's shoulders sank slightly. I wasn't asking you to cry, he said softly. I was asking you to be honest without attacking everyone in the room. The audience murmured in agreement. Harry heard it, his expression sharpening. Right, he said, because heaven forbid a royal actually have boundaries. Jimmy smiled sadly. Boundaries are one thing, he said. Contempt is another. That line didn't get a laugh. It got silence. Harry looked at him, irritation open in his eyes. You invited me here, he said. You knew what you were getting. Jimmy nodded once. You're right. I did. He glanced briefly at the camera, then back at Harry. But I also thought you might still be capable of a conversation that wasn't just you proving how far above all of this you think you are. The studio felt smaller, denser somehow. Harry's reply was soft but razor sharp. Maybe, he said. I'm just finally done pretending this circus deserves respect. Somewhere in the control room, a producer swore under their breath. Everyone could see it now. This wasn't going to burn out quietly. It was going to break. And Jimmy Kimmel, still sitting there with a stack of questions, had to decide how far he let it go. The band's soft transition music faded awkwardly as the camera cut to a tighter shot of the desk. Jimmy shuffled his cards once more, then set them down deliberately. When he looked up at Harry, his tone was measured, careful, almost surgical. All right, Jimmy said. Let's talk about something you've managed to keep at arm's length tonight, your brother. A quiet wave moved through the audience. Some leaned forward instinctively. William, Jimmy continued, gently. People still talk about the two of you like you're frozen in time as kids walking behind that coffin. Do you ever speak, no off camera, off statements? Harry's face hardened instantly. Why are you obsessed with dragging personal wounds into public entertainment? Jimmy didn't rise to the bait. I'm asking because millions of people grew up watching you as a pair, he said. They wonder what happened. Harry let out a short, humorless laugh. What happened? He repeated. We grew up. Some people just did it more honestly than others. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jimmy nodded slowly. Do you miss him? Harry stared at him, eyes sharp. I miss the idea of a brother, he said. Not the institutionally approved version of one. That's evasive, Jimmy replied quietly. It's precise, Harry shot back. You're just not hearing what you want. Jimmy took a breath. Do you believe reconciliation is impossible? Harry leaned back, arms crossed. I believe some bridges were made of glass, he said, and people keep acting surprised when they shatter. Right. Jimmy studied him. And your father? The room tensed. Harry's lips pressed together. For a second, it looked like he might refuse to answer. Then he spoke, slower now. My father made his choices, he said. So did I. That's all you're willing to say? Jimmy asked. That's all that's owed to strangers, Harry snapped. The word strangers drew an audible reaction from the audience. Jimmy's jaw tightened slightly. You know, he said, voice calm but firmer, you're here because people care, because they've followed your life from the moment you were born. They don't see themselves as strangers, Harry scoffed. That's the problem, he said. They think proximity through a screen equals entitlement. Jimmy didn't interrupt. You talk about empathy, Harry continued, warming to his frustration, about understanding. But the public never had to live under 24-hour scrutiny. They never had to learn to smile while bleeding. Jimmy nodded. Fair, he said. But some would argue you now live off the very scrutiny you despise. Harry leaned forward abruptly. You keep repeating that like it's some great revelation, he said. Yes, I profit from telling my story. That doesn't make the story untrue, Jimmy replied. It makes it complicated. Harry smirked. Life's complicated. You should try it sometime. Collective inhale swept through the crowd. That one was unmistakably insulting. Jimmy exhaled slowly. I'm trying right now, he said, sitting across from someone who seemed determined to turn every question into a personal attack. Because every question is an attack, Harry replied. That's simply not true, Jimmy said. To you, maybe? You've never had your childhood sold by tabloids. Jimmy paused, voice softening. No, but I've had my mistakes replayed on loop, too. Different scale, same exposure. Harry's laugh was sharp. You're a comedian who chose fame, he said. I was born into it. Don't confuse the two. The audience reacted with murmurs and a few scattered boos. Harry noticed. So now they're turning on me too, he muttered. predictable. Jimmy glanced toward the crowd, then back to Harry. It's not about turning on you, he said. It's about how you're speaking to everyone right now. There's a tone of exhaustion, Harry cut in, of someone tired of being dissected by people who don't listen. Jimmy's voice sharpened slightly. You're not exactly making it easy to listen. Harry's eyes flashed. Because I'm not here to be liked, he said. I'm here because your producers needed a headline. Jimmy shook his head. We invited you because you're still one of the most fascinating public figures on the planet, he said. Not because we wanted a meltdown. Harry stared at him. Then why keep poking? Harry asked. Because you came on a talk show, Jimmy replied. And that's literally what happens. The audience laughed nervously. Harry D. and single quotes. T. Jimmy shifted gears, voice carefully neutral. Let's talk about you outside the family for a moment, he said. Since leaving the royal role, how do you see your career now? What do you actually want to do? Harry hesitated, then shrugged. I don't need a career defined by approval anymore, he said. I do advocacy. I do projects that matter to me. Some would call them media projects, Jimmy pointed out. Harry's jaw set. Everything is media now, he snapped. Even this conversation. Jimmy nodded. True, but not everything is hostile. Harry's smile was thin. You've been chipping away at my family for 20 minutes. Let's not pretend this is friendly. Jimmy straightened. I've been asking the questions millions of viewers would ask if they were sitting here. You're the one turning them into battlegrounds. Harry's voice dropped colder. Because the battlefield followed me into this chair. The audience shifted. A few front row viewers exchanged uneasy glances. Jimmy studied Harry's tight jaw, restless posture, and exhaustion curdling into arrogance. You know, Jimmy said quietly, at some point, pain stops excusing behavior and starts shaping it. Harry scoffed. So now you're my therapist too. I'm your host, Jimmy replied. And right now, you're making it very difficult for this to remain a show. Harry leaned in, eyes hard. Then, stop asking questions you don't want the answers to. Jimmy held his gaze. I'm asking questions because that's my job. You're answering like someone who came in already angry. Harry exhaled sharply. Maybe I was, he admitted. The admission landed raw and brief, immediately buried beneath bravado. But that doesn't mean you get to push, he added. Jimmy sighed. And it doesn't mean you get to disrespect the room. The audience murmured in agreement, louder than before. Harry glanced around, aware the balance was shifting. He smiled tightly. Ah, he said. There it is. The crowd turns, the host stiffens, and suddenly I'm the villain again. Jimmy's voice was steady. No, right now, you're a guest who's burning through goodwill very quickly. Harry's face hardened. Goodwill is overrated, he said. Honesty isn't. Jimmy shook his head. Honesty without respect, he replied, just sounds like contempt. The silence that followed was heavy. Harry leaned back, arms crossed, openly defiant. The audience felt it. Jimmy felt it. Humor could no longer rescue the moment. Somewhere in the control room, a producer whispered, "We're losing him." The studio was quiet in that uneasy, live television way. Jimmy sat straighter, his playful charm replaced by deliberate firmness. "Let me ask one final question, right?" Jimmy said, carefully. Not as a comedian, not as a critic, just as a human being. Harry didn't respond. He stared ahead, jaw tight. "You carry a lot of anger," Jimmy continued. "At your family, at the press, at the world. Do you ever worry that one day your kids will grow up and inherit that anger too?" That did it. Harry's eyes snapped to Jimmy. Sharp and furious. "Don't you dare drag my children into your little psychological experiment," he snapped. "You've already mined my mother for decades. You're not doing that with my kids." Jimmy lifted a hand slowly. "I wasn't attacking you. I was asking you to look forward instead of backward. Harry laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You didn't grow up with your grief sold to the highest bidder. Jimmy's voice softened. No, but I do know that living in permanent battle mode eventually destroys the person holding the sword. Harry stood. The audience gasped as his chair scraped the floor. You've been provoking me all night, Harry said coldly. You wanted this moment? Congratulations. Jimmy stood as well, but didn't raise his voice. No, he said. I wanted a conversation. What I got was hostility, contempt, and a refusal to treat anyone in this room with basic respect. Harry stepped closer to the desk. You invited a prince, he said. You got exactly what you asked for. Jimmy met his eyes. No, he said firmly. We invited a guest. A guest does not insult the host, the audience, and the show itself and expect to stay. Harry scoffed. So you're silencing me now? Jimmy shook his head. I'm ending this, he said, because this program cannot continue like this. Harry stared in disbelief. You're kicking me off your show. Jimmy's answer was calm and final. Yes, I am. The audience erupted, some in shock, others in applause. The band sat frozen, unsure whether to play. You've crossed the line repeatedly tonight, Jimmy continued, and I won't let this turn into a spectacle of disrespect. Harry grabbed his jacket from the chair. Enjoy your moral high ground, he said mockingly. You'll need it for the headlines. Jimmy nodded once. I'll take that over losing control of my studio. Harry turned to the audience, giving a short, bitter bow. There you go, he said. America at its finest. Boos mixed with applause as he walked off the stage, disappearing behind the curtains without another word. Jimmy remained at his desk, standing, breathing slowly, visibly steadying himself. Well, he said quietly to the camera, that was not what we planned. The audience laughed nervously. We'll be right back, Jimmy added. After the shortest commercial break of the night, the music kicked in. The camera faded out. If this moment shocked you, there's much more you haven't seen yet. Like the video if you felt the tension. Subscribe for the next confrontation and comment below whose side were you on.